Alrighty, well, I'm going to get started. It is 5 o'clock, so welcome to everyone who's here. I appreciate you joining for this. This is our first episode of the MCSS mixtape. Oh, hold on, I got some more people trying to come on in. All right, so I will go back and say again, hi. Welcome to tonight's episode of the MCSS mixtape, teaching controversial issues without winding up on the local news. I am your host, not Dave Johnson. And my name is Kimberly Rugglesworth. I am the past president of MCSS and also the presenter this evening. Dave was unable to make it due to a prior commitment. So he said, I think you can handle it. And I said, yep, I think I can too. I will introduce myself a little bit more in depth in just a minute. But I want to go over some ground rules and give a few quick announcements for tonight. So if you are attending the session and wanting to earn some sketches, we will send out a form after the session has concluded. It's going to come to the same email where we send out the recap. So whatever email that you use to register, you should get your recap and your sketch form there. You'll have about a week to get that form back to our awesome MCSS office manager, Mandy, by emailing it to her at info@mcssmi.org. That will also be on the form, so you don't have to remember or write it down right now. So be on the lookout for this. It says on here a little later this week, but I'm guessing with tomorrow being Friday, you might want to look out for it early next week. So this is one of several sessions on our mixtape, and we hope that you'll consider attending many of them. Our next offering is Culturally Responsive Curriculum Audit Process, being hosted by our friends from Detroit Public Schools Community District 1 week from tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. Please note the time difference for that session. All the rest are from 5 to 6. That one is from 6 to 7 due to some scheduling conflicts with the presenters. I would also like to announce our spring conference this year, which will hopefully help lead us to volume 2 of the mixtape. The conference will take place May 3rd and 4th at Macomb ISD in Southeast Michigan. If you have a lesson, a strategy, a topic that you're dying to share with others, our call for proposals is now open. Who knows, you might just end up on volume 2 of the mixtape in the fall. And finally, we offer a lot of great programming like this webinar series for free, regardless of membership, but there are also a lot of great benefits to being an MCSS member, from discounted rates to the MCSS conference, as well as member-specific publications and advocacy. Your $40 a year goes a long way toward advancing social studies education across the state. If you're already a member, consider renewing early and locking things in for another year. If you're not a member, there is no better time than now to join MCSS. All right, so with that, it is time to get started. This is weird. I'm reading my own bio and I feel really awkward. So I'm going to read through it anyway because I wrote it. So it says, Kimberly Rugglesworth is a veteran social studies teacher. Oh, hold on. I got another person to add in here. A veteran social studies teacher who has spent her entire professional career at her alma mater, Onaway High School. In addition to teaching a multitude of core and elective courses, she is also an adjunct professor for Oxford Teachers College at Reach University. She's currently the past president of MCSS and was recently named a top 10 finalist for the Bill of Rights Institute National Civics Teacher of the Year Award. Kimberly is married with a daughter, and her family enjoys the wilds and waters of northern Michigan in all 4 seasons. So hi, thanks. Okay, I have to switch out slide decks here, so give me just a second to do that. All right, so as I said, this is teaching controversial issues without winding up on the local news. And so this was actually going to be my intro. And as I read in my own bio, like I said, that was just really strange. I am Kimberly Rugglesworth. I am a high school social studies teacher at Onaway High School in Onaway, Michigan, which is way up here in the tip of the mitt. I'm also past president of MCSS. And the reason why I chose this topic is, unfortunately, it is something that I know a whole lot about. It says this is happening right now, but this has actually been happening over the course of a couple of years. So, in the fall of 2021, so we've got to go back quite a ways here, I decided that I was going to use stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. Isn't it terrible? I don't have the book title written down in my notes, so I can't even remember what it is, which is the young adult version of Ibram X. Kendi's Stamped book. And I decided I was going to use it in my current events class. I thought, racism is a current event in this country, and learning how to be anti-racist is something important. Unfortunately, I had one in particular, but a small group of parents who took offense to the fact that I was, quote, trying to make their students be ashamed of being white, which, as any educator knows, is not the reason why any educator would try to teach kids about racism. So this particular article right here is from August of 2022. This was from Bridge Magazine. And I will say definitely in August of 2022, I was tiptoeing. Like, we had been through a year of this. There was a lot of heat on me. There was a lot of heat on my administration, who were wildly supportive, and I appreciate them very, very much for being so supportive. But there was a lot of pressure on, and there was a lot of concern amongst kind of everybody in our teacher community in our town. So this is another part of it, out of the part of the article out of the Free Press. The sad face, I figure I'm being a pretty nice person, and I'm not going to smear this person's name all around, but the parent's 15-year-old son was a sophomore at Onaway High School at the time. He was not a student in the class where I was teaching the book that the parents were so upset about. And this was really the biggest concern, was that I was using a book about systemic racism. I was doing the critical race theory thing, which I totally wasn't. And so this led to a lawsuit against our district and against our county sheriff's department. We have a school resource officer, because the parent was caught eavesdropping and taping a private meeting between the superintendent and a school board member in his office. The way that our office is set up, there's like a couple of funny blind corners. And so she stood outside the office and was recording them having a conversation where they were actually talking about her. But believing that they were in private while they were having this conversation. So she was removed from the school. She was banned from the school. She had her cell phone taken away from her as evidence. And the case was actually dropped by our local circuit court judge, who said that she was absolutely allowed to do that, to the shock of anybody who knows anything about the law. And so then she filed a $20 million lawsuit against board members, the superintendent, principals, our school resource officer, our county sheriff, for $20 million. Now, just to put that in perspective, my district is really small. Our operating budget yearly is right around $5 million. So we don't have $20 million in the bank, not even close. In the meanwhile, this parent ran for school board along with several people that she put together on a slate, and she won a seat on the school board, as did 3 other members of her slate of people. So as a 7-member school board, they now have a 4-3 majority, which has been complicated, to say the least. There are all sorts of things going on. We are having school board meetings 2 to 3 to 4 times a month in my community. But when some information was potentially going to come out about this parent, she mysteriously dropped her lawsuit. claiming that it was for the good of the kids, for the good of the community, for the good of the schools. There's a lot more story to that, but I'm not going to drag somebody else through the mud because I'm trying to rise above. But I just want you to understand the background of why this is an important topic to me, because this has been my life. Really for the last 3 years. If you Google my name, you are going to find news articles where my name is featured. And, if you really want to know more about this, you can absolutely find out. Oh my goodness, hold on a minute. That I did a little too much clicking. I'm sorry. Just trying to admit somebody into the Zoom room here. It's hard to be the presenter and be admitting people all at the same time. So please bear with me. But yeah, so like I said, this has been, big deal in my life over the last couple of years. I'm still in the classroom now because it's important to me to be there for kids. So if you want to know more about this, you can Google my name. You'll probably find the parent's name. If you really want to know more about it, if you're going to MCSS, look me up. We'll hang out at MCSS together. I'll buy you a beer and I'll tell you the whole story. All right, so let's continue on into what we're actually doing. So I am going to have you, normally if we were in person, face to face, I would do 4 corners with this, or I've done it as a human barometer as well. But I'm going to ask for anyone who would like to answer this question in the chat. So you have a couple of options there. How do you tackle controversial issues in your classroom? If you're not in the classroom, how would you have, had you, if you were in the classroom? So do you tackle them head on, multiple scaffolds and supportive administration, only when brought up by your students, or are you a hard pass? Like, nope, I don't think I'm going to tackle anything. So I'll give you a minute to drop that into the chat, please. All right, so I'm seeing some things coming in. Jennifer says multiple scaffolds and admin support. That's sort of where I'm at too. Depends on the topic. Some I take head on, others only when if brought up. Yeah, sometimes sometimes you don't bring them up on your own. They might not fit your curriculum, but you get that kid that walks in and like I had that today. Miss Riggs, what the heck is going on in Israel? I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasn't prepared to talk about that, but okay, we'll talk about it a little bit. Marshall says head on. Scott, options 1 and 2 using G3. Yes. Annie also says head on. Oh, Missy, you've been on the news too. Yay. Talking about white privilege. Yeah, exactly. That comes into my story as well. And then Joshua, I'm also been brought up by students. Yes, Annie, you think that, they're paying to be there, that you can have a little bit more opportunity, but yeah, we're ready for it. Definitely ready for being on the news at any kind of step of the way. So one of the questions we have to think about is, why are we teaching these things in the first place? Definitely should be more than just trying to push the envelope with kids, because that is like guaranteed to get you in trouble quick. You just want to start an argument in your class, for example. And I know some teachers that are like that. They just want to like kind of push kids and, see how far they can get them to argue with each other. You definitely should have some kind of a strong reason. And one of the things that you can make the connection to, obviously we can make the connection to our curriculum. I teach world history. I teach this year for the first time in a really long time. I'm going to be teaching US history. I'm not teaching civics. My heart is broken, but that's a long story. I always teach a current events elective. So that's the one. That's where the controversial issues come up, because everything we're talking about in there could be controversial. We're talking about what's going on in Congress right now with the search for a speaker. Obviously, the Israel, Palestine, Hamas, all of that is huge. Like, that's been on our little news broadcast that we watch every day this week, and students are constantly asking questions about it. My student that was in a different elective class was the one that asked me today about Israel. So you have to think, like, what are your connections to your curriculum? That's really important. But another thing I think is really, really important is trying to decide, what skills are you trying to develop in your students? My stock story is always, I want my students to be critical thinkers. I want them to be able to look at an issue and say, okay, I'm hearing side A. What is side B? What is side C? What is side D? Like, what are all of the sides of this? And then I'm going to try to decide for myself. I've always been careful in my classroom when students ask my opinion to say, this is only my opinion. This isn't a fact. This is what I think. If you ask me again tomorrow, my answer might be different because I might learn something new before tomorrow that I'm going to, that will change my opinion, change my thinking. It's definitely something that you want to make sure that you are prepared ahead of time for what you're going to do. You definitely should not, decide at 8 o'clock, hey, when my first class starts at 8:15, I'm going to tackle, abortion as a topic in my class. That's probably not a very good idea. You definitely want to make sure that you have got some background. Also, you should be thinking about investigating your own biases surrounding the issue that you're going to choose. Couch an opinion by saying it's your opinion. That can really go a long way toward protecting you from getting criticism from outside of the class. Are you promoting an agenda? Really think about that and really be honest about that question. That you don't want to be pushing your opinion on kids. Giving them your opinion and only giving them the one side that matches your opinion are really two different things. Are you trying to convince them to think a particular way? Maybe that isn't always wrong. I'm always trying to just convince mine to think. Full stop. Just if you'll think about it, that's what I want. Definitely if you're thinking that you're going to use your classroom as a forum to preach your views, maybe you shouldn't be in teaching at all. That is definitely not your job, your position. So some of the skills that I identify that I'm trying to do within my classroom, skills for life, thinking critically, like I said, that's so important to me. If I can make my students into critical thinkers as adults, I'm successful. If they don't remember a single dang thing about world history, but they can critically think about issues that they're faced, I call that a huge win. Would I like them to understand some historical stuff? Sure. How to analyze information, how to problem solve, how to negotiate. These are all things that are really important in our life. And then skills for the modern world, how to communicate clearly. As we know, a lot of people are not very good at this. And how to get your point across in a way where you are not attacking other people. You're respecting those differences. The whole idea of civil discourse, we unfortunately have gotten away from that in a lot of parts of our society. And so I'm hopeful that maybe I can build that back up into our students so that when they are adults in the future, they're going to be able to have those conversations about topics where they feel really strongly in a different way from someone they know. And so a couple more things, more of these skills kind of for active citizenship, how to compromise. Look at what's going on in the House of Representatives right now, where they, we're trying to figure out how to fix, the potential default on the debt, did it. And now the guy who kind of ushered that plan through is out on his ear. That's not necessarily a lot of compromising that's going on. How to make decisions, how to reason, and how to use your morals and your ethics to reason, how to have ethics, for goodness sake, and how to apply abstract ideas. Everybody wants to sort of distill things down to this like really simple solution. And we know that that's not the case. There aren't really simple solutions to anything. And I realized I flipped these around and I did them backwards. So I don't really know why I did that. So I apologize. I've already sort of hit this slide. So I'm just going to go on. Okay, so I'm going to ask for some thinking in the chat again before we go on to this next slide of information. just throw some ideas in the chat of controversial issues that either you have talked about in the past in your classroom, or issues that you think would be relevant in a classroom that are controversial that people might talk about. I'll give you a minute to think about those and add into the chat. So whenever I'm trying to think about issues and controversial issues, I'm always trying to decide for myself this idea of settled versus open. Missy, yes, it is a struggle to have that kind of discourse in class sometimes. Race and gender, super, super important. But sometimes you just don't have the trust level with the students, or, you never know with those classes. You get that class where you have like that one kid, and it's like, boy, if that kid's not here tomorrow, we can talk about this. But if they are, I don't know if I want to, because, they're going to be a problem for it, for real. I definitely look at this idea of settled versus open. And so this is actually kind of one of the strategies that I would use with students to get them into talking about a topic like this. We think about one of the things that I've learned through working with the Holocaust Center is this idea of safely in and safely out with controversial issues. And so I like to kind of help them come into this safely in and safely out by giving them what I call big paper, or I also have called it a silent discussion. So you get like the big chart paper, and you can put different topics on there. I say that and I've got this slide going in two places and I forget to do it. You can put topics on there. You could put a question on the paper. You also can do it like with images. It's great with historical images, just to get them to really investigate. And then have students respond to whatever prompt that you might have. And they can also respond to their peers, but you have to tell them you are not allowed to talk to each other. You can only talk to each other by writing on the paper. It does a great job of pulling out those students that maybe aren't going to raise their hand and aren't going to contribute to a discussion every time, because, they're those just deeper, quieter kids. I like to look out for those kids. I was that kid when I was in school. I'm not that kid anymore, but I definitely was the one that would just sort of sit back. You have those other kids that they're very deep thinkers and they have great ideas, but they're a little bit slower in coming to their understanding of a topic. Like they're just much more thoughtful about it, compared to those kids that are like, they're really forceful, like those natural debaters that are just like, yeah, I'm ready to go, let's argue. And so it gives them the opportunity to have their say as well. And so you could do this with a topic and with those questions. Put something up there. What do you think? Do a lot of people disagree about this particular topic? Do a lot of people disagree that European explorers are given a lot of respect by society compared to what their actions were? Are there logical and conflicting viewpoints? What are those logical and conflicting viewpoints? And then, is this something currently being debated? And, I think that with like the European explorers, I think it kind of is, because we've had, the push to take down statues of Columbus, for example, states trying to decide, should we celebrate Columbus Day or should we celebrate it as Indigenous Peoples Day? So you can give them this type of topic, and then it kind of helps them to, like I said, get safely into it and be thinking more about it before you're going to tackle it and actually try to, discuss and debate whatever topic is that you have chosen. So another thing that I've thought about a lot, and especially since, all of this controversy with my teaching in my classroom started, is instead of kind of moving back, which was what my original reaction was. My original reaction was, you know what, I'm scared. Like, I'm scared for my career. I didn't really think that my administration, who, like I said, has been very, very supportive through all of this, I didn't think they're going to let me go. That was never a thought, but I always was concerned about, are they going to move me into a different position maybe? Keep me on as a employee, but maybe move me some out of the classroom. And I really didn't want that to happen. I really like being in the classroom with students. So when I started kind of, after all of this had happened and thinking about how I was going to teach, I really was thinking about being safe. I want to be safe in my classroom. And then I started doing research on some techniques and teaching tools that I could use. And I found this article about that safe is good, but brave is better. And that has sort of changed the way that I do things in my classroom. I have really revamped the way that I do some of the discussions that I, regularly do, things that I regularly do about different topics in class. And I try to start my classes every year with some things to train kids a little bit on how to do this. So, let's have some rules. How are we going to have a discussion in this classroom? Okay, we've got some rules. Let's make it into a contract. Let's sign it. Let's make it real. We're going to agree that we're going to abide by these rules that we made together as a group of students with a teacher. And then the other thing over there on the right is I think, most important thing you could ever do, regardless of whether or not you're going to talk about controversial issues in your classroom. And that is to build relationships in your classroom with your students, know who they are, understand who they are, laugh with them, cry with them, build those relationships up, because they are going to be your number one defenders if anything comes down to it. I can name multiple students of mine that have been my number one defenders throughout all of this. I had students who were terrified to talk in front of people, address the school board, because they wanted the school board to understand the influence that I had had on them. And I mean, never never can you be prouder as an educator where your students are, getting involved in local government, and then even on top of that, talking about like what a great teacher you are, like that even makes it definitely one step even better than that. So Harvard University has Project Zero, which has so many amazing, great things. If you've not heard of Project Zero, I suggest you run there as soon as this webinar is done and check out all of their ideas that they have on there. And so I've got a couple that we're going to use. I'm going to put a link in the chat. And I'm going to cross my fingers that this link is going to work, because that's my luck, is that it seems like sometimes I will do things and they don't work, but it should give you the opportunity to make a copy of a document. And the document is Why Brave versus Safe. It's about a page of reading, so it's pretty brief. But then at the bottom on a second page, there are 3 questions from the Connect Extend Challenge kind of teaching strategy. So for Connect, how do the ideas and information in the reading connect to what you already know about teaching controversial issues? Extend, how does this reading extend or broaden your thinking? And then last but not least, challenge. Does the reading challenge or complicate your understanding? What new questions does it raise for you? So this is something that you can do in a classroom with students. I mean, obviously not the Brave versus Safe document, but you can do this with really any document. Primary documents are great for this. Read through it multiple times. Read through it once as a class. If you are yourself a really strong kind of expressive reader, read it yourself. If you've got students that are great readers, get some volunteers, talk to them before class and say, hey, I want to have you read a paragraph of this. I'm going to give it to you now, look it over. And then have students go through it, read it independently, have them mark it up, definitely give it to them on a paper that you don't need back. Give them highlighters, give them pens, give them colored pencils, whatever it might be. Have them ask their questions right on there. And then have them use that document to answer that connect, extend challenge. It really forces them to think really deeply about what it says. Then come together. I like to pair this with a pair share. So they answer these questions on the paper for themselves, and then they sit and share it just for a few minutes with a peer that they're sitting next to. It's fine if it's their best friend. That's fine. They might agree on a lot of it. They might find out they disagree on a lot of it, which is always really fun. But yeah, just give them that opportunity to share that out, and then ask them to report out to the full class. You're getting into that bit of information, um, where they're thinking more deeply about whatever the topic might be. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to actually look through at this Why Brave versus Safe article. If you have Connect Extends Challenge, if you want to jot stuff down, I have it set up so that you made your own copy of it. If you want to drop your ideas in there, we'll have a little discussion about that afterward. If not, no pressure. But I'm going to give you about, let's do about 4 minutes to read through that. And then I'll just ask if there's anybody thinking anything more about Why Brave versus Safe. Okay, so that has been about 4 minutes. So I want to give people the opportunity, if you want to come off mute and make any comments about this, like how did you connect to the information? How did it extend your thinking, or how did it challenge your thinking? Oh my gosh, I keep doing this. I'm so sorry. Gonna make whoever is watching this later like seasick with all of my things going back. Or if you have some thoughts that you want to drop in the chat, we can take it that way as well. Nobody ever wants to come off mute and talk, which is fine. Totally understand. So just a few of the kind of really important things I think that come out of this that are important to share with students as you are, kind of working your way in to this. And let me go into the chat though, because I see Paul has made a comment. I hadn't really thought about how different students might view a safe place. So that is something I think we'll keep in mind a little more. Yeah, it's we think our safe place is the same safe place as everyone. And that this really was eye-opening for me. I think about different subgroups in my classroom that they're more comfortable if they can talk to their subgroup, their people first about whatever the topic is. It gives them some confidence to know a lot of times that there are other people in the class that share an opinion with them. That is a really hard place for kids, is to feel like they are the only one thinking that way. But if they can at least first talk to other kids that they self-identify as having something in common with, that can really help boost confidence for them to be able to talk. You know, kids have to understand that if you are going to be talking about controversial things, like they have to be prepared to hear things that maybe are going to hurt their feelings. Not intentionally, you're not attacking someone, but it might be attacking an opinion or some, a deeply held view that you have. And that's painful sometimes, to hear that a belief that you have maybe is wrong. Like, we don't want to be wrong. Especially as teachers, we really don't want to be wrong. And I've had some students say some things that I thought, oh my gosh, I never thought about that way. And so it's really, it's really important for kids to understand. I want my students to be able to ask difficult questions. And that's tough because they don't want to, you have those other kids that don't ever want to challenge their teacher. So you kind of run into that as well. And you want to tell them, it's okay. It's okay if you do that. Scott, you had your hand up and then you took it down.
Sure. I mean, I'll voice, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
Kim, as you know, I'm super passionate about this space and do a lot of work too. And the line that catches me and continually catches me is when we do this work with students, that there's there's a kind of a step-by-step process, if you will, and students are going to work through this in a different time frame. And so towards the last paragraph, it talks about the defensiveness that a student can often take on when we talk about equity and we talk about race and bias. And as we start to learn about whiteness, I guess, if you will, with this group, and as we start to learn about privilege and as we start to learn about other cultural spaces and understandings, defensiveness can occur. And so that catches me every time, that there's a process in this and it never stops. And so as an educator, I love that you talked about this safe in space, that we really have to build a community first in order to be able to do this work, as well as an educator, that have I done the work to be able to lead this space too, in understanding who I am and my implicit biases. So that line always catches me, that we have to be prepared as leaders in this space to know that our colleagues are going to work through a number of spaces with us, and together as a community. And so I love that this brings that opportunity out for classroom communities to grow together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott. And to be prepared for that in yourself with students, that, if you start feeling that defensive feeling, you've got to be able to moderate it. You have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for hearing things that maybe, are going to be hard to hear. Yeah. Encouraging students to give their honest opinions and sharing their lived experiences. That's scary for some kids. You have kids that are coming from just things that would ruin your sleep for the rest of your life. And those things sometimes are going to come out. And you have to be ready for that. It's going to affect you. I can't tell you the number of times where I've had, I don't want to say heated, but like very deep, in-depth discussions about social issues in my classroom. And, I made it through school and I made it through the day. And as soon as school gets over, I go sit in my car and cry um, because I'm so, emotionally drained, but also, my heart is going out to these kiddos, these teenagers that have lived an entire life at 15 and 16 years old. Um, and they were at a place where they felt safe in my classroom, in my presence, and in the presence of their peers, to share something that is just horrible that has happened in their life, happened to them, happened to a friend or family member. Um, you know, so we could stay on this. I don't like, I'm looking at my time and I'm like, oh, there's like 15 minutes. But yeah, so definitely hold on to that little bit of an article. It's a bigger article. I think I have the link to it at the end. I hope I do. If I don't, I'm gonna feel like a total failure here. Um, so the last thing with this, like safe is good, brave is better, is encourage bravery in your students. Talk to them about feeling uncomfortable and being comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, which is a very weird way to say it, but um, you know, try to help them understand that that's how we get better. Is, we hear opposing views, we hear different ideas, we hear different opinions, and then we try to move forward together and find a place where we can create something that is the best for everyone involved. So another thing that's going to be really, really important in keeping yourself off the news is communicating with your stakeholders. And I feel like saying this to a group of teachers is really like preaching to the choir, because hopefully we all know this. We know that we need to think about parents and guardians. What are the goals that you are trying to achieve with discussing these things? What skills are you trying to build? Go back to those earlier slides that I had. I want my kids to be critical thinkers. Why? Tell the parents why. I'm not trying to tell your child how to think. I just want them to take all of the information, and bring it all together. I don't want to change their views. I don't want to change what you're teaching your child at home, because at the end of the day, that's your child. But I want them to think deeply about it. And I think that's where you run into problems with parents a lot of times, is you're encouraging their kids to challenge ideas, and then the kids are going home and they're challenging their parents. Um, but that's also part of being teenagers, that's part of the growing up process, I think. Teaching them how to use evidence in their arguments so that it's not just, well, I have one student this year, I kid you not, I hear from this child every day. Well, I heard that, and some just off the wall thing. No, but let's look into that and let's find out what's really happening. And has not made a dent with her in 6 weeks, but I'm hopeful before the end of the semester that maybe I'm going to be able to make some headway. And talk to parents about Safe and Brave. Talk to them about what you're going to do. Inform your admin what you're doing. I always make a drive by to my principal's office in the morning when I know some controversial topic's going to come up. And I'm like, hey, just to let you know, we're going to be talking about XYZ today, just in case you get the phone call. Because the students are sitting there in your class and they've got their phones in their pockets or their backpacks or wherever they are. It's very easy for them to send a text message to mom or dad and say, oh my gosh, you won't believe what Miss Riggs is saying in class right now. And then the principal gets the phone call, and then the principal has to come down to your room. I'm not saying this has ever happened to me before, but it has. So if your admin knows ahead of time that you're talking about these things, they a lot of times can head it off and say, yes, I'm aware that they are talking about XYZ topic in class today. You know, I'm sure that what you're saying is being taken out of context, et cetera, et cetera. And then definitely try to create that buy-in with students. So again, another place where you're building the relationships with them, building trust, having a respectful environment in your classroom where people's opinions and ideas and thoughts are valued. And like I said, they're going to be your biggest advocates. I still think about my one student in particular who was a troubled young man. He is still a troubled young man, but he went to bat for me at the school board to tell them, she cares about me and she has changed my life because of making me reevaluate my thoughts about myself and my place in the world. So, then just a few other kind of ideas for strategies that you can use. And I have kind of pieced these together from a lot of different places, and I've got some websites and whatnot on the end. And I will share this, I will share a link to this with you. So learn to listen and listen to learn is a great one. Forces students first off to kind of be a little bit introspective, writing in a journal about a topic that you give them. So you give them the topic and then you just tell them free write, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however it works into your schedule. Then you put them into, yes, I do. I have my people. I literally had my students last semester, last spring. I taught a genocide studies class, and it was probably the greatest class I've ever taught. And it definitely was the greatest group of 10 students I had ever taught. And we had so much fun, and they learned so much, and I learned so much. And yeah, get those people around you for sure. So, step 2, sharing and listening. So you go through and have the students highlight the really important things that they wrote down in their free writing, what was important to them. And then they each get a turn without any interruption to share what they wrote to a small group. So you could do it in pairs. It's usually better with groups of like 3 or 4. Then in the small groups, they have this open discussion. It's not a debate. They're just sort of discussing. Give them 10 or 15 minutes to do this. And then as a group, they're going to pick out 2 to 3 ideas that they're going to share with the entire class. Then have the small groups present what their 2 or 3 kind of important ideas. They don't have to be ideas that agree with one another. They can be ideas that, maybe let me start over and come up with the word that I want. Purposely can be ideas that are in conflict with one another, because that was really the main idea of what was going on being talked about in their small group. From there, you can kind of facilitate a discussion of all of the ideas, or you can go straight on to step 5, where they're going to revisit their journaling. reread back through what they wrote at the beginning of the discussion, and then kind of reflect on how their thoughts and ideas have changed through that. What did they learn from the activity? What questions do they still have? What did they learn more from? Listening to other people or presenting about their own? You will have kids that will kind of go back and forth depending on what you're talking about. They'll say, oh, I learned a lot more by listening. Or they might say, I realized partway through when I was saying what I was saying that I didn't really agree with it once I started thinking more about it. So you can do this in about an hour. So if you have a normal length school day or school class period, sorry, of like 50 minutes, you can definitely get it in there. We have a little bit longer. We're on a semester block, so we have a slightly longer amount of time. And it usually gives a good time to have like kind of that group discussion before you go back and do the kind of the revisit reflection on the journal after that. So some other things that maybe you have used before or have heard of, some of these might be new, but I just want to kind of throw them all out there. Philosophical chairs, read a text, write a statement about it. So you can do this with primary documents. You can do this with excerpts from books. You can do this with newspaper articles, magazine articles, all kinds of stuff. Then have students get together and choose different statements that people have written, decide, do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Are you undecided? And then they're going to sort of position themselves in the room, similar views kind of on either side, and then put the undecided kids in the middle. Have a facilitator read the statement and then call in students, and they can get up and you'll see this a lot. They'll be listening and then all of a sudden get up and move to the other side because they're like, wow, you talked me out of my thought. I agree with this side now. And it's good for if you've got a group of kids that probably should be moving more than sitting, have them just stand up. Don't even let them sit in chairs. Have it be philosophical standing. Some others, fishbowl. I think this one is hopefully one that most people are familiar with. I use this one with text. I don't necessarily just use it as like give them a topic to discuss. I always like for them to have something to begin with, and get your inner and outer circles, give them a question that has to do with the text. Inner circle is the one that's going to be actively discussing. Outer circle is just going to kind of listen, take notes, and then you can rotate them in and out. I like to do allow a student that's in the outer circle, if they decide that they want to come in, they can tap someone, but the person they tap can say, no, I'm not done yet. And so sometimes you'll see them, they're kind of like, doing ring around the rosy, going around the circle, trying to find somebody that'll let them in while they're talking. You can also do it where you do like a wholesale change. Say, okay, let's take a pause, everybody switch. And a couple others, structured academic controversy. I have this one in here. I don't use this one very often. It doesn't suit me, it doesn't really suit my personality, but I know a lot of people really like structured academic controversy. So it's kind of like a structured debate almost. But then they're trying to come to consensus rather than trying to like win the debate. So divide students into groups of 4, then pairs. They decide, each pair researches the arguments, each pair presents a side, and then they switch and they present the other side, so that they have to present both, the pros and the cons, or the positive side of this issue or the negative side of the issue. And then they try to come up with a consensus, and then they can present that to the class, or you can have them write about it, reflect on it. Lots of different things to do there. And then the last one that I have on here is, of course, the Socratic seminar, which is another good one. And I like this one as well. Read a text, annotate it, get questions. Facilitator throws out an open-ended question, and then they just sort of answer, respond to each other, ask their own questions. This works really well if you have a group of students that are very comfortable with one another, that have already done a lot of discussion and aren't afraid to put their ideas out there. I wouldn't recommend this one as kind of the first thing to do, because kids are going to be nervous about talking. They're not going to necessarily want to ask questions of one another. But I use this a lot with my upperclassmen in my elective courses, when we get toward the end of the course, I throw a topic at them and then I just sort of sit back and watch, and it's great fun. They will dive deep into topics and weave in and out of opinions, and it's really it's amazing to watch. And I just sort of sit back and get a warm feeling because my students are doing like amazing things. So some of the places where I got some of these ideas, and you can get some other ideas, are here: Facing History and Ourselves, Learning for Justice, the Anti-Defamation League, and then my amazing friends over at iCivics have got a roadmap as well as a bunch of videos on how to teach controversial issues that are really, really good. So I recommend all of these websites for sure. And then here is the bit.ly link to this slide deck. And also there is a QR code there if that's quicker for you, if you want to snap a picture of it, in case you want to look at any of these in more depth than we had time for. Other than that, I did not leave very much time for questions. I apologize for that. There's only like 2 minutes left, but if anyone does have questions, I would be happy to answer them. If we stand here a little bit long, that wouldn't be a problem. If not, thank you all so much for joining us. And I am going to get this other slide deck up. So the Michigan Council for the Social Studies would like to thank you for your time and attention tonight. On behalf of everyone listed here, we wish you a great rest of your night and a continued successful school year. Thanks so much, everyone.